Jack Mallers and the man in charge of creating America's national sovereign wealth fund has just started a MicroStrategy Copycat. This company has secretly accumulated 42,000 Bitcoin right out of the gate, becoming the third largest Bitcoin corporate holder. And today we're going to be exploring whether the secret whales behind the new company 21 is responsible for the recent Bitcoin price explosion and why this gradual supply suffocation is sending the Bitcoin multiplier effect to new all-time highs. Before I get into the whole news story, I'm going to bring on my boy Luke, and he's going to explain to you guys how the Bitcoin multiplier effect works, and then I'll break down the recent news development. So Luke, how you doing this morning?
I'm great, and I'm feeling a little bit bullish if we're talking about supply suffocations, MicroStrategy copycats, and the multiplier effect. So just quickly, everybody knows Bitcoin's rare, it's scarce. There's 21 million coins. Now, something really interesting I've been watching over the past 5 years develop is for the first time in Bitcoin's life, coins have been leaving the exchanges. So this number peaked out in 2020. For the first 11 years of Bitcoin's life, coins on exchanges grew to about 3.5 million. Today, we're at about 2.5 million. So we've seen 1 million Bitcoin, or about 35% of the supply on exchanges, disappear. And it's moving to the hands of these new MicroStrategy copycats that we're going to be breaking down and talking about today in depth and in detail. Now, what's really interesting, over these past 5 years, we've seen this supply suffocation happen. What we've seen is the Bitcoin multiplier effect has now hit new all-time highs multiple years in 2021 and in 2025. Now, why is this? Well, this is because Bitcoin is rare, Bitcoin is scarce, and for every $1 that wants to flow into Bitcoin, it doesn't push the Bitcoin market cap up by $1. And that's because Bitcoin's rare and scarce, and not all 21 million Bitcoin are available for sale. So this chart here, you can see the title, Bitcoin market cap gain per dollar invested. It's a little bit of a mouthful. So in my 2021 article, I just said, let's call this the Bitcoin multiplier effect, because that's what it is. And that's what the pink line is measuring. And you guys can see this pink line hit a new all-time high in 2021, 4.85. And now today we're at 5.81. So this is a new all-time high. For every dollar that wants to flow into Bitcoin, Bitcoin's market cap is pushed up by 5.81x. And I think the more rare and the more scarce that Bitcoin becomes, and the more Bitcoin that's ripped off the exchanges, what's going to happen to this number is that it's going to rise, it's going to grow. I think it's going to grow exponentially. And I think there's only a matter of time before this multiplier effect hits 10x, 20x. Now, why is that? Well, that's because the coins on exchanges, the available supply right now is dropping like an absolute rock. So that's why Opti and I are so fascinated by this most recent news today. It's because this company's come straight out of the gate saying, look, we hold 43,000 Bitcoin. We're the third largest corporate holder. And I think it's fascinating that they've just put everything on the line and secretly accumulated this amount of Bitcoin.
Yeah, it's actually incredible. That's probably the most surprising thing about this. Not only who's running it, but just how much Bitcoin they actually hold. All right, guys. So let's get into the news story. You guys got the multiplier effect, and we'll chat about that a little more. Here we go. Coming from the Financial Times, aka the Fiat Times, we have the company announcement, and this is coming from Business Wire. If you guys know Business Wire, this is where a lot of businesses announce their, press releases about things coming up. So we have here Tether, SoftBank Group, and Jack Mallers launched 21, a Bitcoin native company through a business combination with Cantor Equity Partners. Now, this is backed by Tether and SoftBank Group. 21 is expected to launch with over 42,000 Bitcoin and a mission to maximize Bitcoin ownership per share. And they're emphasizing this idea, Bitcoin ownership per share, very, very strong. I think a lot of Bitcoiners understand this. We've heard Saylor talk about this constantly, and this is essentially their main motive here. So the co-founder, Jack Mallers, will lead 21 as a CEO. Absolute, juggernaut of a Bitcoiner. This is like probably one of the biggest, most surprising things about this. And then going on and go, 21 is expected to offer investors a singular vehicle for Bitcoin exposure, pro-Bitcoin advocacy, and Bitcoin-focused content and media, with plans to explore future expansion into Bitcoin native financial products. Now, again, here we're going to kind of go into into the jargon and the actual press announcement, but we got 21 Capital, a newly formed entity, today announced it has entered into a definitive agreement for a business combination with Cantor Equity Partners, a special purpose acquisition company sponsored by an affiliate of Cantor Fitzgerald, a leading global financial services and real estate services holding company. At the closing of the business combination, 21 will be majority owned by Tether, co-founder of 21 and the world's largest stablecoin issuer, and Bitfinex, with significant minority ownership by SoftBank Group Corporation, one of the world's leading investment holding companies. 21 and CEP, which is Cantor Equity Partners, have also entered into subscription agreements with investors to raise at closing $585 million of total additional capital, consisting of $385 million through convertible senior secured notes, aka what Saylor's been doing, and $200 million through a common equity PIPE financing. The net proceeds from the PIPE offerings, which will close contemporaneously. Wow, it's rough reading today. With the business combination, will be used to purchase additional Bitcoin and for general corporate purposes. 21 expects to launch with more than 42,000 Bitcoin, which would make it the third largest Bitcoin treasury in the world as of today. Absolutely insane, just coming out of the gate at number 3. This is huge. I'm absolutely huge. Now, this is, I think, where the main ethos coming of the company, it goes a new era, measuring success in Bitcoin. And this is something we talk about here constantly on the show. I've been kind of trolling or really leading more towards the idea of once we start to price energy in Bitcoin, that's when it's game over. I've been calling it the Petrosat. Other people have been talking about this, but here is where we start to see measuring the success of equities and stocks through pricing it in Bitcoin. So 21 is built to accumulate Bitcoin and grow ownership per share, and not just track it, aka track the price, but Bitcoin and ownership per share. Considering, we've seen Saylor do something similar. We've seen Metaplanet do something similar. It's not about, the price of the share. It's how much Bitcoin each share holds. As part of its launch, 21 will introduce 2 key performance metrics to reflect its Bitcoin denominated capital structure and Bitcoin focused mindshare, which is first, Bitcoin per share, or BPS, the amount of Bitcoin each fully diluted share represents, reflecting shareholder ownership in Bitcoin rather than fiat earnings per share. A truly revolutionary idea that I think is going to catch on like wildfire. And then, of course, the Bitcoin return rate, or BRR, rate at which the Bitcoin per share grows over time, denominating the company's performance in Bitcoin. So you guys can read this whole thing. It goes on to talk about Jack Mallers. It goes on to talk about Cantor Fitzgerald or Howard Lutnick. But here's a good quote here from Jack Mallers. Markets need reliable money to measure value and allocate capital efficiently. This is what we constantly tell everyone on this show. And he goes on to say, we believe that Bitcoin is the answer, and 21 is how we bring that answer to public markets. Our mission is simple: to become the most successful company in Bitcoin, the most valuable financial opportunity of our time. And we're not here to beat the market. We're here to build a new one, a public stock built by Bitcoiners for Bitcoiners. And it's got a couple other quotes, but going further, we did get this Bloomberg terminal here kind of explaining where the Bitcoin's coming from. There is some interesting stuff here. So we have here from the Bloomberg terminal, Cantor prepares $3 billion crypto firm with Tether and SoftBank. So Cantor Fitzgerald, LP, Tether Holdings, and SoftBank Group are in talks to form a $3 billion vehicle that would absorb billions of dollars in, it says, cryptocurrency, but it's going to be in Bitcoin. Cantor Equity Partners Inc., a special purpose acquisition company, raised $200 million in January and will use the cash to create a new firm. Stablecoin giant Tether will contribute $1.5 billion of Bitcoin, while Tether affiliated exchange Bitfinex and SoftBank plan to put in $600 million and $900 million of Bitcoin, respectively, according to a person familiar with the matter. And then going further, it goes, the deal may be announced within a couple of days. I think this came out on, it was like Monday or Tuesday. And then, of course, this is where we start to see that people are starting to take the Michael Saylor strategy, Bitcoin strategy, seriously. So the deal is the latest spin on the business model of MicroStrategy, a software maker turned Bitcoin holder that has amassed about $45 billion of the digital asset. Copycat crypto buyers such as Japan's Metaplanet Inc. have sprung up around the world in recent years. Their purchases are typically funded through the sale of stock and other financial instruments, including convertible notes. Then it talks to Tether, about it being basically the most profitable company in the world with $7 billion in excess reserves. It talks about Howard Lutnick, who is what's the title? Secretary of Commerce, part of the crypto adversary group. He's obviously also very huge in Bitcoin. You guys have heard the clip of him saying he's going to buy hundreds of millions of dollars of Bitcoin. Cantor Fitzgerald is also a partner with Tether, and he's a part of the U.S. government. Some people say that maybe there's some concerns there, but hey, as a Bitcoiner, I like to see Bitcoiners in position of power. Though, the last thing I want to mention in here that me and Luke were kind of talking about, there is an interesting tidbit that I didn't know, and it is that Lutnick's son, Brandon, Cantor's chairman, helped introduce Tether to the video platform Rumble, which I found very interesting. Again, you could say that, they're just here to profit, but it looks like they're Bitcoiners. Now, kind of talking through where all this Bitcoin is coming from. Again, Tether is the most profitable company in the world. So that $1.5 billion of Bitcoin, it's probably part of their reserves there. And of course, also Bitfinex, one of the world's biggest exchanges in the world, or rather, I think it's the second largest exchange by number of Bitcoin held with around 403,000 Bitcoin. So that's probably where those Bitcoin are coming from. It's coming from their reserves. But the very interesting part about this is SoftBank getting into Bitcoin and seemingly buying $900 million of Bitcoin just right off the rip. Now, Kaiser, Max Kaiser, he jumped in on this, and I don't really agree with the rest of this tweet, but the first sentence I totally agree with, and this is, I think, part of the signal. The Capital 21 deal validates and proves the theorem first proposed by Strategy, aka Michael Saylor's company, that when it comes to selling securities to buy Bitcoin, dilution equals accretion. Now, moving forward, interesting story around SoftBank that I wasn't aware of. Obviously, huge investment firm, but the CEO, how do you say this guy? It's Masayoshi Son. He actually bought like the 2017 top, and he went through his own Bitcoin journey. Obviously, if you buy a huge investment in Bitcoin and it drops and you're buying the top, it does mess with your psychology. And here you can see SoftBank CEO sold his Bitcoin for heavy loss because it was distracting. Masayoshi Son lost somewhere between $50 to $130 million in 2018 when the Bitcoin's price volatility became too much for him. And of course, this came out in 2020. And you can see here that he didn't understand Bitcoin, and watching the price fluctuate was distracting his focus from his business. I think all of us Bitcoiners can feel his pain. Now, David Bailey jumped in here a little bit, and he goes, it literally couldn't have been more obvious. You need to buy Bitcoin. And we have a clip here, a screenshot here of Masayoshi Son's, Howard Lutnick and Donald Trump at Mar-a-Lago. And you can see here with the headline, SoftBank CEO at Mar-a-Lago, Masayoshi Son to announce $100 billion investment in U.S. over 4 years. Now, we've been hearing a lot of talks about foreign investment into the U.S. We've been wondering where that money is going. And I think David Bailey hit the nail on the head yesterday. He's like, it couldn't have been more obvious. He's up there with Howard Lutnick. He's there with Trump. We know that the Trump administration is taking Bitcoin very seriously. And here we are with this SoftBank announcement. Now, again, David Bailey doubles down and he goes, another way to read the headline, SoftBank has officially entered the Bitcoin market with an initial $900 million acquisition. SoftBank holds $180 billion in assets, $32 billion in cash, and a massive portfolio of companies that hold immense influence over. So you could argue or venture to guess that this is just the beginning. And then going further, we got some really good screen grabs here from the official announcement. And, Jack Mallers, Howard Lutnick, Masayoshi Son, are kind of angling this as a superior MicroStrategy. Now, we've been talking about this on the show for a while. Can someone come into the space and acquire more Bitcoin than Michael Saylor's strategy? Now, that is still up for debate, but you can see from this chart that they're putting out there that they're saying they compare favorably to MicroStrategies across metrics. You can see strategy, pure play Bitcoin exposure. They're just purely Bitcoin. Bitcoin native operations, again, purely Bitcoin. Existing debt balance, I'm guessing they don't have much debt. They're a brand new company. Debt collateralization, again, seemingly better. Insider ownership, completely owned by these Bitcoiners. Of course, Saylor, I think his majority shareholding is somewhere around 40%, and you guys could fact check me on that. And purpose-built KPIs, again, they're saying this is a better play than MicroStrategy. Now, I know Nico and I were kind of joking for a little bit, like, we missed a MicroStrategy boat, we missed a MetaPlanet boat. Is the next boat going to be GameStop, or is it 21? Now, we are Bitcoiners. I'd say buy as much Bitcoin as possible, but it's looking like we are seeing these Bitcoin securities hit the market, and there's going to be a lot of interest in this. So this is a very interesting new play. And as you can see in the bottom, 21 is potentially a superior vehicle for investors seeking capital efficient Bitcoin exposure. We will see how this plays out, but with the leadership of Jack Mallers, I think this is going to be a huge play. Now, you guys know for the last couple of days, or rather last week or so, I've really been diving into Simon Dixon's, analysis of what's going on. And this is a pretty interesting take. And then I'm going to pass it over to Luke and we'll chat about this. So Simon Dixon goes, Jack Mallers 21 is launching a SPAC as a capital efficient alternative to MicroStrategy, backed by Cantor Fitzgerald, a primary bond dealer to the Fed. Here's what I think the real play is. SoftBank, a Japanese bank, putting in $900 million, Tether putting in $1.5 billion in Bitcoin, and Bitfinex putting $600 million in Bitcoin are putting in Bitcoin seed capital. Japan is dumping treasuries. The dollar is weakening under Trump's tariffs. Long-term yields on bonds are rising, and they're setting up for a short dollar long Bitcoin trade. Expect a stablecoin backed by U.S. debt plus Bitcoin somewhere in the mix. In fact, Cantor has already been talking about that. They're a custodian and shareholder in Tether already. They're draining yield, stacking sats, and using Fed/equity/debt markets to do it. You probably should be considering if you should be doing the same. And then this is where he, puts his spin on. It's not about politics. It's about decentralization versus centralization. Follow the money. This is Trump-aligned capital betting against the dollar, pretending they are MAGA. And then he goes, full disclosure, I'm a shareholder in Bitfinex. So very interesting stuff. I think this is a huge move. And kind of in response to what we've seen in the Bitcoin price, we were all wondering. I know last week on Friday, we were kind of sitting here feeling a little bearish. Then the price starts pumping a little bit and we're like, we're so back. It is interesting to see. Is this the reason that the Bitcoin price pumped? Though we know about, 2.1 billion of that was probably just coming from Tether and Bitfinex treasuries. But I'm venturing to guess that the SoftBank $900 million is that new capital coming into the market, buying Bitcoin. And when you add that to the multiplier effect, I think that might be the reason why we're seeing the Bitcoin price start to rip. And it really goes into one of our theses we talk about here constantly on the show. It's only going to take someone with conviction to come into the market to move the Bitcoin price. And we might be seeing that in the time where there's all kinds of uncertainty in the market. So here we go. I ranted enough, Luke. What's your thoughts on all that? Break it down. How are you seeing this? Is this as big as we are making this? Or are we Bitcoiners just excited that the Bitcoin price is pumping?
Well, Bitcoin is pumping. And I am going to explain why I do think it's bigger than most people give this most recent announcement credit for. But I saw a comment in the chat. Somebody said, SoftBank equals soft hands. I think that's just a brilliant little explanation of their CEO let his hand in the 2017 top. Again, what's the saying? You all get Bitcoin at the price you deserve. Now, this most recent announcement, I think it's really interesting. I wanted to crunch the numbers. So there's 2.5 million Bitcoin on exchanges. And we know that this company just bought 42,000 Bitcoin. So I was thinking that's interesting. That's big. A brand new Bitcoin corporate treasury. They just came straight out and they said, yeah, we own 42,000 Bitcoin. And they're going to buy more. So I wanted to see how many public companies could do exactly what this new company called 21 could do. Crunch the numbers, and that's what I got. 59 companies out of the 58 1,000 public companies can buy the same amount of Bitcoin that this brand new company just bought. Just think about that for a minute. That's 0.1% of all of the public companies in the entire world can buy a 42,000 Bitcoin stake. Maybe that's why this company secretly bought the Bitcoin and just came out and announced it from day one. Hey, we got 42,000 coins. I don't know, but I do think it's really interesting. I just think it really ties into this broader thesis. I think the 900-pound elephant in the room that nobody is talking about is the fact that 1 million coins have disappeared off the exchanges over the past 5 years. And I think we're beginning to see signs that billionaire FOMO is accelerating. There's 170 public companies with Bitcoin on the balance sheet today, and it's nearly every week we see another massive announcement. 2 weeks ago it was GameStop. GameStop said we're going to put $1.3 billion into Bitcoin. We're going to raise even more capital, even more debt. That's thousands of Bitcoin gone off the market. Now, again, it's something I think a lot of people forget is that a lot of these public treasuries, whether it's nation state Bitcoin treasury adoption or whether it's public corporation treasury adoption, these guys are not trading Bitcoin. Okay, these guys aren't hedge fund bros trying to make a couple of $100 million playing the Bitcoin 4-year cycles. Like, once thousands of Bitcoin go onto the balance sheet of some of these large corporate whales, it's going to be really difficult for them to sell the Bitcoin. Again, a lot of people will say, but they're going to sell, they're paper-handed, they're weak-handed, blah, 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 blah. I mean, you can make an argument for that, but I think just have a look at what MicroStrategy's done over the past 5 years. They've endured a 70% correction in 2021, a 75% correction in 2021, 2022. They've survived a lot of volatility, and they haven't sold a coin. And Michael's saying, look, the Bitcoin held by MicroStrategy, it's going to be held for 100 years. And I don't think enough people are really running the numbers and having a look at the maths of what that means. If one CEO, one public company is squatting on 500,000 coins, it's about 2.5% of the entire supply. What happens if he actually does sit on this for 100 years? What happens if another 5 companies want to copy him? It's not, again, a lot of people think this is crazy, but just have a look at today's announcement. 42,000 Bitcoin bought by a Bitcoin treasury company who's comparing themselves to MicroStrategy, which implies they're probably going to want to sit on those Bitcoin for a long time. They're not going to be trading their Bitcoin. I think I think it's the law of large numbers. Every week we're bombarded with another public company who buys 10, 20, 30, 42,000 Bitcoin. And a lot of people are just like, I don't care. It's just another MicroStrategy. And they're not really thinking about, all right, what does the end game here look like? If what we've seen over the past 5 years continues for another 5 years, what happens? I don't think it's some sort of like linear game where you can say, Bitcoin price hasn't moved that much in the past 5 years. Yes, we've 20x'd. Again, the Bitcoin price coming into 2020, it was at $5,000 a coin. We're now at $100,000 a coin. That's the new normal. I don't think Bitcoin just 20x's over the next 5 years. And again, if what just happened in the past 5 years continues, Bitcoin 20x's to what, $2 million a coin? I don't think it works like that. I think when Bitcoin on exchanges get to zero, we're going to find out what the real price of Bitcoin is. And I don't think it's going to be $2 million a coin. I think it's going to be much, much higher. And we're talking about today's purchasing power. Again, I could just be getting crazy here. Maybe Opti needs to rein me in just a little bit here. But I think nobody's giving these billionaires enough attention. I think it's massive what they're saying and doing.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, the biggest thing, and I think we've all been talking about this the last couple of weeks, is like with all this bullish news that we're seeing, it's absolutely incredible that Main Street and retail are still asleep at the wheel. It's like, how could you not be reading all of this stuff and being like, I need to buy some Bitcoin, whether it's 1% of your portfolio, 5, 10, or like all of us maxis and just go all in. It feels like there should be an itch in people's minds. Maybe they're just not, obviously they're probably just not so absorbed and obsessed with Bitcoin news that they maybe aren't hearing all of this stuff. But if you hear all of the news that we've been covering for the last year, it's absolutely incredible that we're not seeing just extreme FOMO. But again, maybe it's just people waiting for the price to start ripping. And now we're starting to get the price movement. But I do have a quick question, Luke. When you did that math, for what you do, 42,000 divided by 21 million. Was that the math you did? Because we all know that that's physically impossible here. So
let's do it live on air. I went 2.5 million Bitcoin. Again, I hope I'm not wrong.
Oh, exchanges. Okay, I see what you're doing.
Divide by 42,000 Bitcoin. This is the new buy today. How many companies can copy what this brand new company has done? 59. So 59 companies can buy that amount of Bitcoin.
Okay, so that's the Bitcoin currently on exchanges. That's absolutely nuts. And I think that really leads into just how scarce Bitcoin is. People just fundamentally don't understand just how little Bitcoin there is and how much capital there is in the world. And when you try to wrap your head around this multiplier effect, it's like, okay, right now we're at what? Every $1 that comes into the market is basically moving up the price by $5. I think we're all still have PTSD from 2021 and, you know, this recent local top that we are fundamentally underestimating just how hard this price can rip. So, you know, don't get caught on the sidelines. This is the time to be buying Bitcoin. This is the time when you need to get your position. And I think maybe leading into what we've been saying for a while, we are seeing that people are trying to get their positions and then they're going to announce it. I mean, I think this 21 Capital announcement is exactly that. Like, hey, we're going to do this company. Oh, yeah, sorry. We acquired 42,000 Bitcoin and then we announce our company. I think more people are doing this exact playbook. So you better get off zero. This is the main signal here. All right, guys. So let's get into the show. Before I go on, I want to remind you to smash the like button and hit the subscriber button. And of course, comment on the video. Let us know what you think about today's show. And of course, we want to give a shout out to our lead sponsor, Bitcoin Well. Go to bitcoinwell.com/simplybtc to join Bitcoin Well. They are the best place to acquire Bitcoin. They are Bitcoin only. They are self-custody by default, which literally means you will never get rug pulled if you buy from Bitcoin Well. This is one of the main concerns of Bitcoiners, that you need to buy it on places that aren't going to rug pull you, so that when you buy your Bitcoin, it goes directly to your wallet. This is the way. So go to bitcoinwell.com/simplybtc. And I just realized I haven't done a couple coin tosses. So get your wallets ready. When you sign up to bitcoinwell.com, you will get some rewards and you'll get some Bitcoin Well tosses. Okay, so they changed the dashboard up. Shouts out to the boys over there. All right, get your Lightning wallets ready. Scan the QR code, first come, first serve. When you sign up, you will get 3 tosses into the wishing well and a chance to win up to 1 million sats. Okay, 500 sats, first come, first serve. On that note, guys, we got a jam-packed show. We have corporate press, the media, essentially saying Bitcoin memes now. The decoupling meme has escaped Bitcoin Twitter. It is going on the corporate press. All the boomers are hearing it now. We're just memeing it into reality. And in the news, I want to talk about the ETFs. I know the ETFs are a little boring now, but they are scooping up Bitcoin. And then we have Luke on today. So the tail end of the show, we are going to get extremely bullish on you guys. You already know Luke might be the most bullish content creator out there. Is he crazy, or is there facts backing up everything he's saying? On that note, guys, let's get into the show.
I want to tell you guys about our sponsor, Stamp Seed. Is your Bitcoin in cold storage really secure? Are your seed words really secure? Stamp Seed's do-it-yourself kit has everything you'll need to hammer your seed words into commercial-grade titanium plates instead of writing them down on paper. Don't do that. Paper sucks. You want to literally stamp your seed into this plate of titanium. Your words are actually stamped into the metal plate with this hammer. So once your words are in, they aren't going anywhere. No risk of the plate breaking apart and your pieces falling everywhere. Titanium stamp seeds will survive nearly triple the heat produced by a house fire. They are also crush-proof, waterproof, non-corrosive, and most importantly, because this is generational wealth, time-proof. All things that paper is not, allowing you to hodl your Bitcoin for the long haul. I mean, here is the plate that they crushed. They put in water, they put a blowtorch to it, and as you can see, the words have survived. Stamp your seed on Stamp Seed. And you can use promo code SIMPLY to get 15% off anything on their store. Head over to stampseed.com today.
All right, guys, quickly scan the QR code so you can get yourself a stamp seed. On that note, we are over here on Clark Moody's dashboard looking at the time chain numbers. The current Bitcoin price is 93,690. Boys and girls, we are back. This time feels better, I'm not going to lie. All right, the sats per dollar, aka how much Bitcoin you can buy for a single dollar, aka how much the dollar is worth in Bitcoin, is currently at 1,067 sats per dollar. The current block height is 893,661, and the market cap in fiat terms is 1.86 trillion. An interesting story this morning before the stock market opened up. Bitcoin rose the ranks of market cap, global market cap. It hit 5th, but then stock market opened up and it came down a little bit, but it passed Google for a moment, it passed silver for a moment, it passed Amazon for a moment. So this next couple of rips, I think we might be able to secure the 5th largest market cap in the world. So with this whole devaluating of the stock market that we're seeing play out right now, Bitcoin's going to really quickly climb those ranks. So an interesting metric to watch. The Bitcoin versus gold market cap is 7.93%, and the total percentage of Bitcoin that will ever be issued is currently at 94.54%, roughly, again, 19.85 million Bitcoin in circulation. And the realized monetary inflation, taking fiat currencies to school, is currently at 0.84%. All right, guys. Now, we've been talking about this. There's a lot of cynical Bitcoiners saying, the decoupling meme is, not happening, and we're all, smoking hopium, but it's starting to make waves. The memes are going viral, and we have a clip from Bloomberg talking about the decoupling. But there's one other thing that I want you guys to notice, and I'll mention this after the clip. It's a short clip, but tell me if you see what else is interesting in this clip.
Breaking away from tech stocks at a pretty good time, trading more like gold, just in time for gold to rocket higher. You can see that physical Bitcoin gold is up about 9% over the past month in April alone. That has dragged Bitcoin higher, especially in the last couple days. The crypto is up about 6% or so. And take a look at what has happened to tech stocks. In blue, you have the NASDAQ 100 actually lower by 6.5% or so. So Bitcoin may be taking on some safe haven characteristics, at least.
Interesting. The first part is, let me full screen myself because I found it hilarious. Did you catch? She said physical Bitcoin, aka gold. Guys, we are fundamentally getting into the mind share that they're calling gold physical Bitcoin. We've been calling Bitcoin digital gold. Now they're on the corporate press calling Bitcoin physical gold. The memes are going viral. Anyways, here's a chart. And as you see, Alex Thorne, from Galaxy, he goes, this is the chart that Wall Street is seeing on their screens today. And this is the chart that the Bloomberg lady was talking about right now, that Bitcoin and gold's gained since start of Trump's tariff war. And you can see here in the blue is a NASDAQ composite index, or the tech stocks, because that's what basically pushing the NASDAQ. And you can see I'm the most colorblind guy here. So gold is what? This pink one up here. It's kind of going down. We have Bitcoin in white, and it's absolutely starting to rip. And then we have NASDAQ and the Bloomberg dollar spot index kind of going sideways. And of course, in the last couple of days, NASDAQ is going down. So whether you believe the decoupling meme or not, people are seeing this chart and they have to be asking, what is going on in the markets right now? How come Bitcoin is ripping when it should be kind of dumping in all of the economic uncertainty? So a lot of interesting metrics. And then going further, our boys, Marty Ben over at TFTC goes, the correlation is fading. Is Bitcoin diverging from NASDAQ? Now, this would be absolutely insane. It would really kind of confirm and validate a lot of the things as Bitcoiners have been saying for a long time, that at a certain point, Bitcoin will decouple from tech stocks. I know we've been kind of seeing the correlation that Bitcoin is kind of acting like a tech stock. It might be a higher volatility tech stock with more gains. And now it looks like we might be finding ourselves in an environment where Bitcoin is breaking. So the chart goes divergence between Bitcoin and NASDAQ. Bitcoin is rallying while the NASDAQ 100 struggles. But that divergence isn't necessarily bullish. Historically, when the NASDAQ's 200-day moving average is trending down, Bitcoin tends to face strong macro headwinds. So we have the chart up here at Bitcoin at the top. And it goes, Bitcoin is back to its 200-day moving average while NASDAQ is declining on the 200-day moving average. And it is historically a strong headwind for Bitcoin. So can Bitcoin maintain this decoupling, this divergence? We'll be here to cover it. But it is interesting that they are talking about the meme. They're saying it on corporate press, on Bloomberg. All of the capital is seeing this. The boomers are hearing this. They're like, wait, my my whole portfolio is in NASDAQ, and now somehow Bitcoin is ripping against it. I thought this wasn't possible. Again, this is the chart that all of Wall Street is seeing, and now they fundamentally have to wrap their heads around what is going on. How come Bitcoin is performing so strong in the face of all these macroeconomic headwinds? And all of us Bitcoiners just like, it's very simple. 21 million hard cap, apolitical, neutral money that no one controls. Like it's a very simple thesis, guys. And we knew this day was going to come. Will it hold on? Who knows? But these little moments, I think, show what we've been saying is actually true. And Bitcoin kind of does what it wants to do. Sometimes it leads, sometimes it's the panic alarm in global liquidity, and sometimes it's the lead indicator of global liquidity. And I think these might be one of these moments. We saw what happened with the tariff trade war. It decoupled for the day while everything else dumped. And then on Monday, because it's the most liquid asset, people sold it off. And now it looks like it's holding really strong. I don't know about you, Luke, but when I see stuff like this, it goes back to the initial question of the show. How are people looking at Bitcoin in this current economic landscape and not getting bullish, and not actually, rather maybe the opposite, not getting afraid of where their portfolio is sitting and why they're not seeing the same gains that all of us 45 IQ Bitcoiners are seeing on Bitcoin Twitter? Anyways, what's your thoughts on all this, Luke? Are we seeing the decoupling meme play out in real time?
Not yet.
Ooh.
When we see the decoupling meme, it's going to be impossible to ignore because, again, I think we're going to see some really crazy things in the future. I think everything we've kind of seen on the short term and the medium term over the past 5 years, it's all just been noise. I think the disconnect between the fundamentals of Bitcoin and the price of Bitcoin over the past 5 years, it is the biggest opportunity for all of the hardcore Bitcoiners to take advantage of. Again, I haven't met somebody in Bitcoin who said, yeah, you know what? I bought enough Bitcoin when I first started learning about it. Not one person. And this is just simply because I don't think we've seen anywhere near to what is Bitcoin's potential power or of its value in the future. I think when Bitcoin really decouples, we're going to see things like Omega candles. I do think Samson Mount's thesis about Omega candles is just reality. And again, I don't think 100K daily move is really that big in the grander scheme of things, especially when you start thinking about, look, okay, there's $900 trillion of capital in the world. Bitcoin's $2 trillion in size. A 100K move, it's not even that much. It's a $2 trillion move. That's it. And I don't think it's that big at all, to be entirely honest, especially when things like the multiplier effect today are at 6x. So a lot of people say, all right, where would $2 trillion come from? That's about, what, is that nearly 1% of the size of the global real estate market? What people don't understand is with today's multiplier effect, you only need $300 billion to come in a day to give us an Omega candle if we do have that 6x multiplier effect. If we just extrapolate out the chart that we were looking at earlier, where's the multiplier effect going to be in 5 years? I think it's going to be much higher than 6x, much higher than 8x. Just based upon previous data that I think is flawed, you're going to be looking at a 9, 10, 11, 12x multiplier effect. So I don't think it's crazy to assume that we're going to see $50 to $100 billion of inflow into Bitcoin in a day. It's not as crazy as most people think. So I just think the broader picture, we haven't seen the true decoupling. The true decoupling happens when we see an Omega candle, a $100,000 daily move, and stocks are crashing at the same time. That would be fascinating to see. But I do think Bitcoin would just do this on its own. I don't think it'd be a market catalyst for us to see the true decoupling. I think it's just going to happen purely based upon simple supply and demand economics. Like we talked about, the most recent Bitcoin corporate treasury, who's now the third largest corporate treasury, 21, they just came out and announced 42,000 Bitcoin buy. They didn't, there was no foreshadowing of this. They didn't say, look, we're going to begin buying and try to get 42,000 Bitcoin. They just said it. What happens when Saudi Arabia comes out and says, yeah, you know what? We've actually bought 420,000 Bitcoin, and not just 42,000. What happens then to the price of Bitcoin? It moves. It moves. And this is, again, the true decoupling. That's when I think we're going to see it.
Well, I mean, obviously, I'd love to see that decoupling moment. I think we will see this. You'll see our reaction live to this on Simply Bitcoin. But something about that is just telling me, like, if we see that 100K Omega candle, and I don't even remember what's Omega candle, what's God candles. I keep getting those mixed up. But if we did see a 100K candle on a day where the markets are bloody, I don't know, that would be almost like a, apocalyptic moment. And I would be like, there is something fundamentally wrong in the world and people are waking up. That's like really an oh shit moment. I think we could all say, if we saw that, as happy as we would be to see the Bitcoin price start pumping, I would probably be terrified. I think I would be scared. I'm like, what is going on? Something is fundamentally broken. The world is over. As optimistic as I am, that would be one of those scary moments, I think. So, hey, we will we'll be here to cover it. No, guys, hey, it's a sweater. Sorry. They're saying, didn't he wear this? I wore it on Monday, guys. Okay. And then I'm getting trolled about memes in the chat. Hey, memes are also a word, Rumble viewers. Memes can be messages, short memes. Okay. They're not just all pictures. All right. Anyways, I'm getting roasted today. I got to keep it moving. All right, guys, we're going to talk about the ETFs. I know you guys don't want to talk about the ETFs, but I think this is more signal on what we were talking about in the beginning with 21 Capital. The institutions see what we see, and they're not being afraid at this moment. As everyone knows the meme, when there's blood on the streets, that's when you buy. And we're seeing that play out. We had an incredible day yesterday in ETF inflows, and we're going to cover that right now. And then to wrap it up, guys, if you think Luke has been bullish already, I am going to tee him up again, and we are just going to get extremely bullish at the end of the show. Actually, my challenge to Luke is, if you guys aren't this bullish and need to stack Bitcoin by the end of today's show, then Luke didn't do his job today. So, or rather, I didn't do my job here as well. Anyways, let's get into the news.
I want to give a shout out to our sponsor, Casa. Casa makes self-custody easy and secure. As a Bitcoiner, I care about holding my own private keys, but multi-sig can sometimes get tricky. Casa nails it with a multi-key security. So even if one key gets lost or stolen, your Bitcoin stays safe. And you don't give up custody, meaning no one could access your Bitcoin but you. No seed phrase anxiety, no single point of failure. I've been telling my friends and family about Casa for years. Their UX and UI on their app is by far the best in the industry. Inheritance planning is built in, and they even offer Casa for Business if you're thinking about a Bitcoin treasury. Hit up casa.io today and use promo code SIMPLY to get 10% off Casa Standard or Casa Premium. Head over to casa.io.
I want to give a shout out to our partner, CoinKite. If you take your Bitcoin security seriously, you'll need the best Bitcoin hardware wallet on the market to take self-custody. That's where Cold Card comes in. The Cold Card Q is the most advanced Bitcoin signing device ever made. It's got a full keyboard, larger screen, and NFC support, making air-gap signing easier than ever. It's built for power users who want the ultimate security without sacrificing usability. And if you're looking for a battle-tested, uncompromising cold storage, the Cold Card MK4 is your go-to with PSBT signing, an industrial-grade secure element, and USB-C. It's the perfect blend of security and convenience. Both devices devices are, of course, 100% Bitcoin only, open source, and built by Bitcoiners for Bitcoiners. Secure your Bitcoin the right way with the Cold Card Q and the MK4. Head over to coldcard.com today and use promo code SIMPLY to get 5% off anything on the store.
All right, guys, make sure you get yourself the industry standard hardware wallet. The best way to secure your Bitcoin is with the Cold Card Q. They also have all other, products out there. But if you want to make sure that your Bitcoin's going to be with you for the long term, get yourself the Cold Card Q. Oh, of course. I got some news for you guys. We got some updates. I know. Hold on. Let me full screen myself. I'm still getting trolled about my shirt. You're not a real Bitcoiner if you have multiple clothing items. No, I'm trolling. Look nice. It's important. It's very important. I know we've been talking about the ETFs, and for a while there, the ETFs was like the trending story. And as we saw by the end of the year, the Bitcoin ETF was literally the most successful ETF launch ever. And now we're seeing that there was some fluctuations in inflows. A lot of Bitcoiners have been watching the ETF inflows to kind of gauge what's going on with the institutional interest in Bitcoin. And when we saw the market crash on the tariff trade war, they stopped buying, Bitcoin to go into the ETFs. They kind of waited till the market relaxed, and then they bought back in. And we kind of slightly covered that last week, but this week we are seeing something interesting. So if you are on the sidelines right now and you were waiting for, I don't know what the calls were for Bitcoin, 58K Bitcoin or 20K Bitcoin, people are saying, oh, it's going to crash to 20K, wick off wave theory, bro. It's a top, 109 is the top. Well, just follow what the money is doing. And I hate to use smart money on institutional capital because I think Bitcoiners are the smartest ones in the room, but they got the deepest pockets, and watch what they're doing. And you can see here, April 22nd, yesterday, that Fidelity, BlackRock, ARK Invest, and Bitwise were all buying Bitcoin. And I'll pull these up for you guys so you guys can check them out. There's Fidelity, there's Bitwise, actually, let's go back. You can see they're buying, 100 million, so a little more, 200 million, north of 100 million. Here we got Bitwise buying north of 40 million. We have ARK Invest also buying hundreds of million, or no, north of 50 million, doing the math quickly on the fly. And then we have BlackRock again, also buying north of $100 million of Bitcoin. Now, I really like this tweet here. And, I'm not going to shit on him too hard for his really bad Twitter name here. But Cedric Bowe says, all these ETF inflows, Fidelity, BlackRock, ARK, are positioning for a post-dollar world. They're building surface area, access rails, infrastructure for capital to flow in fast when the dam breaks. And once it does, the people holding real Bitcoin, not ticker symbols, will be the ones with actual control. So, as much as he has Web3 in his Twitter name, I think this is a good take. I think this is the signal here. And then moving forward, we have Eric Balkunis, of course, senior ETF analyst for Bloomberg. And he goes, this was this morning. And he goes, the spot Bitcoin ETFs went Pac-Man mode yesterday, plus 936 million, 1.2 billion for the week. Also notable is 10 of the 11 of the originals all took in cash too. Good sign to see flow depth versus, say, iBit or BlackRock's ETF doing 90% of the lifting. Price up to 93.5K. Pretty strong, all things considered, in my opinion. So, hey, institution wants Bitcoin. They're the ETF, or rather the customers in these ETFs are buying the ETF, which means they have to buy the Bitcoin. And I know we've been talking about this for a long time. Do the ETFs actually hold the Bitcoin? Well, it seems like the interest in these ETFs are acquiring a lot of Bitcoin inflows. Now, just to wrap this up, I'm on treasuries.bitbo or bitcointreasuries.com, and you can see the ETFs are hoovering up a ton of Bitcoin, with currently almost 1.3 million Bitcoin captured into the ETFs, but basically double the size of what countries are holding. And of course, public companies, it's more than that, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So the ETFs are seemingly becoming a huge vehicle to acquire a lot of Bitcoin. They want the Bitcoin. If you're sitting on the sidelines wondering whether this is a good time to buy Bitcoin, I don't know, just follow what the deep pockets are doing, and they want that Bitcoin. So we've been saying it for forever. Just constantly acquire Bitcoin, take it into cold storage. Do not leave it on exchanges. And if you can help it, don't buy Bitcoin through the ETFs. But I get it. If your 401k allows you to buy Bitcoin, you have money in the traditional system, then, you know, let's get some more buying pressure into Bitcoin. So these inflows are very promising. And again, I think this all connects in this idea. We are seeing that in the face of all the economic turmoil we're seeing, in the face of everyone running around like their chickens are cut off in the traditional stock market, Bitcoin's the clear winner here. And you've been stacking, you follow the Bitcoin news. As that one guy said, you know, he who owns the Bitcoin makes the rules. And you guys have the Bitcoin. So it looks like the world is waking up. I'm as much as I'm kind of tired about talking about the ETFs, I find this very, very bullish. We're seeing some more bullish signals, more bullish indicators showing us that, hey, you know, Bitcoin's not over. I don't think 109K was the top. I think we're going to see an incredible amount of buying pressure towards the end of the year. We might even see, you know, Bitcoin rip to all-time highs by next month. It's seeming like, as the price is moving right now, it feels like all-time high is within reach in the next couple of weeks. So don't sit on the sidelines. Make sure you stack Bitcoin. Anyways, Luke, you've been covering ETFs too, bro. I know we're kind of burnt out on ETFs every time we try to do a show, and ETFs is like the main news story. We're like, we can't do that. No one cares anymore. But this is promising. What's your take on the ETF scooping up this much Bitcoin in the last week?
Yeah, I mean, $1 billion of buying is insane when you really think about it. Only what, 450 Bitcoin are mined every day, and $1 billion of buy pressure is coming just through the ETFs. We're not even talking about what we opened the show with, the brand new public corporates entering the space saying, yeah, you know what? We've just secretly bought 42,000 Bitcoin. We're not even talking about those and all of the billions of dollars of buy pressure coming in that space. Just the ETFs buying $1 billion. Tens of thousands of coins gone on, you know, when 450 Bitcoin are mined a day. This is, again, going back to our earlier point. I do not think the price of Bitcoin over the past 5 years has reflected the new environment we're in. Nation states, billionaires, public corporations, sovereign wealth funds, pension funds, they're all buying Bitcoin. And they're buying Bitcoin for the long term. So I think we're yet to see the true price of Bitcoin emerge and the real decoupling. I do think it's really interesting that we're seeing now, you know, all of this rumors about the highest people in government all spinning up Bitcoin companies, like the Tether Cantor Fitzgerald link to this new Bitcoin company, 21. That's a really interesting one. It just kind of goes to show that, you know, the largest nation state in the world has now entered the chat. I think we're yet to see the Middle East or China or Russia really respond and kind of announce their Bitcoin strategy or their Bitcoin plan. We've seen rumors of China doing a little bit of a backflip. We've seen little bits and pieces come out of Russia, but I think we're yet to see the big announcement. The big announcement is Saudi Arabia comes out and they say, yeah, we've got 500,000 coins. We have the biggest sovereign wealth fund. I think that would be really interesting, and that would be when we really start paying attention, because I do think the ETFs is just a little bit of social validation. Like the ETFs buying Bitcoin, the reason we do cover it so often is it just strips away all of the risk, where the man in charge of the world's largest firm in the entire world with tens of trillions of dollars of assets under management, Larry Fink, is literally going on national news nearly every week saying Bitcoin is an international asset. It's a valid asset. It should be a part of all portfolios. He's writing reports where he's saying you need a 1 to 2% Bitcoin allocation. I think it's all just kind of a little bit of social validation. And when you've got the CEO of the world's largest asset manager shilling Bitcoin, approving Bitcoin, putting his stamp of approval on Bitcoin, this de-risks it for every single nation state, every single sovereign wealth fund. And I think we're yet to see the real announcements hit the tape, so to say, Opti.
Yeah, I mean, like, to your point, even though we've been covering a lot of news that for like the last couple of weeks, people in the chat were like, dude, can we like talk about something concrete instead of what's going to happen? And to that person's point in the chat, like we have been talking about things that haven't actually happened. And, you know, the price has seemingly responded really well, or at least really resilient on it. Today, you know, we actually get some concrete news that there is, you know, 42,000 Bitcoin in a new corporate treasury company or a Bitcoin hoarder company, how the corporate press would talk about. And if we did get this announcement that someone huge has been acquiring and accumulating Bitcoin, or as Eric Balkunis said, you know, Pac-Manning a lot of Bitcoin, you know, he's stealing my memes, guys. You know, I've been saying that on the show forever. We're playing Pac-Man here. We're playing Hungry Hippo here. Acquire the Bitcoin, take it into custody. But once we see a huge buyer actually come into the market, I think it's going to be very obvious in hindsight who pushed the market up, because again, there's not that much Bitcoin in circulation. And the only way to get Bitcoiners to sell that Bitcoin is to push the price up. And I think anyone that's been in the market for this long is like, my Bitcoins are worth way more than where are we at, like 93K right now? You're like, no, these Bitcoins are worth way more than 93K. So once we get an actual announcement of a huge buy, it's going to be game over. And maybe Luke's point of a 100K candle comes to fruition, and we are all terrified because it's ripping too much, and we're having too much fun on Twitter because those days are coming. I'm starting to feel it, guys. I know I am literally the living example of the, you know, it's so over, we're back, it's so over, we're back, it's so over meme, where you're just going through this cycle, or one week you're like, man, it's over, and the next week you're like, we're so back. Well, guys, we are on the we're so back week. So, you know, enjoy it. It's going to get better. It's going to get bigger. The price is going to start ripping. I can feel it, guys. I can feel it in my bones. I'm no longer just, you know, manifesting it or gaslighting myself into thinking the end of the year is going to be bullish. It's coming. I know it's coming, Luke. I know we're going. I know it's going to happen. Anyways, you know, I've been getting a little bullish, but now I'm just going to tee up Luke to rip it and get as bullish as possible. You already know when Luke comes on, he's going to say something ridiculous like we're going to $100 million per Bitcoin by like next year. So we're going to chat about it a little bit. All right, guys, here's the Daily Culture.
I want to give a shout out to our partner, HIVE Digital Technology. Why HIVE in 2025? Unstoppable growth. As the first ever public miner, HIVE's position to quadruple their global footprint, making them one of the world's fastest growing miners in 2025. And with elite operations that consistently top the industry in Bitcoin mined per exahash, HIVE's now headquartered in the USA. They're lean and mean, they're green and clean, and they're rewriting the playbook on sustainable Bitcoin mining. You can catch the latest buzz at HIVE Digital Tech or at hivedigitaltech.com. Need liquidity without having to sell your Bitcoin? For more than 6 years now, Ledn has been the trusted choice for Bitcoin-backed lending with transparency, security, and trust at their core. I absolutely love these guys, and I personally not only have an account with them, but also a loan. And some of the key features that I love about Ledn is the fact that there are no monthly payments. You pay at the end of the term. You also have the ability to roll over the loan as well, and you can pay it back whenever you want. Essentially what they do is that they help their clients unlock the liquidity of their BTC, allowing you to hodl while still accessing the wealth of your Bitcoin. They've been battle tested with their focus on transparency, security, and trust, allowing them to build a proven track record of client success and security, helping tens of thousands of clients harness the value of their digital assets with confidence and peace of mind. Learn more about what your BTC can do for you today. Simply Bitcoin viewers get 0.25% off their first loan by using the link in the video/podcast description. What are you waiting for? Head over to ledn.io today.
Yeah, chat's roasting me today. I'm getting so roasted in the chat. I love you guys. All right, Luke. All right. Well, man, last time you came on, I asked you the simple question of what do you think is the most bullish idea? What are people missing? I don't think I want to ask you that today. You know, I think we've been covering it a lot on the show. So let me just ask you a simple, Luke, like, what is the bull case for 2025? Like, what is the bull case moving forward for the next 5 to 10 years? What actually, I think I'm going to circle it back. What is the masses missing in regard to Bitcoin, and what will be that catalyst so that everyone starts flowing into Bitcoin?
Yeah, the catalyst is the supply shock. That's just only accelerating, and I've just been sitting here waiting for that to happen, and that's what everybody's missing. Like, if the trend of supply suffocation that we've been covering today continues, you got no Bitcoin in exchanges in 2026, next year. If what we've seen over the past couple of months continues, there's no Bitcoin in exchanges 2026. If you're more conservative and you say, okay, let's slow down a minute, Luke. Let's take the trend from 2022. Let's look at 2 years of data. In the past 2 years, 900,000 Bitcoin have left the exchanges. That comes from the chart we showed you guys earlier in the show. Rewind it and check it out. Study it for yourself. But if we see 900,000 Bitcoin leave the exchanges every 2 years, like we just seen, do the maths. There's no Bitcoin in exchanges by 2029. So again, I think this is the thing that the masses is missing. It's the supply suffocation. Now, this is just like the continuation of the trend. If we do get to 2029 and there's no Bitcoin in exchanges, Bitcoin's not at $1 million a coin. It's going to be a lot higher than that. But again, I think the wild card catalyst that I think a lot of people also are probably waiting for and are probably not prepared for is the nation state accumulation game. When Saudi Arabia, when Qatar, or Russia or China comes out and they say, yeah, we've got 500,000 Bitcoin stored away in response to Donald Trump saying, we want every Bitcoin mined, made, and minted in America, what's going to happen? I think I'm shocked and stunned that Bitcoin's at $93,000 a coin today. If you had told me 3 years ago, Luke, in 2025, the president of the United States of America, the biggest nation state in the world, the biggest nuclear power in the world, is going to be talking about mining, making, and minting every Bitcoin in America, creating a strategic Bitcoin reserve, and even creating a sovereign wealth fund for the country, for which we don't know what is going to be in it yet. If you'd have told me all of those things would happen in 2025, I'd say, oh, Bitcoin's at $5 million a coin. Today's purchasing power, not even a question asked. I'd say 5 is probably conservative. We're at $90,000. Again, I think that's the opportunity that the everyday person has today to stack. And I think people don't really need as much Bitcoin as they might think they need. A lot of people look at the price today, it's $93,000 a coin, and they think, I can't buy a full Bitcoin. That kind of sucks. Again, we can probably get even more bullish with some numbers here in a moment, Opti, but I want to know, what is your catalyst? What do you think is the big catalyst that the people are missing today in 2025, or even on a 5 or a 10-year time frame? What do you think most people are missing?
Yeah, I mean, I've been kind of, I think the big thing that we're going to see, and we're kind of seeing it right now, and I don't want to use the decoupling meme, but I do think, and I'm still on the fence on diminishing returns and cycle theory. As much as I still believe in the cycle theory, I think what might be the most interesting catalyst to see, maybe not this year, but going into next year, is whether we're going to see a huge drawdown. And if Bitcoin is able to maintain this like stepwise function going into 2026, when we should be dropping, and we're continuing to see all of this economic macro uncertainty play out in the world, if Bitcoin is able to hold on very strong in the face of that, I think that safe haven meme that we saw, the Bloomberg analyst lady say, is one of those things where something's going to click in their mind and be like, oh my God, maybe these Bitcoiners were right. Like, maybe it is this, uncorrelated asset, or, perfect, pristine collateral. And maybe this is where I need to buy some. So I am really kind of waiting for, I want to know what the catalyst will be for retail to start to FOMO back into Bitcoin. It's been so long. I remember when I got into Bitcoin in 2017, it seemed like everyone and their mother was talking about Bitcoin. It was everywhere. It was on TV. You'd take an Uber and people are like, I'm trading this shit coin. Like, have you heard about Bitcoin? Like, I want to see basically the stampede come back into Bitcoin. And I'm unsure where that is going to be, but I think at a certain price point after we break all-time high, that's going to be the catalyst. And I know guys like, oh, Opti's here talking about price again. Like, what's going on here? Sorry, guys, people watch the price. This is what they're watching. So as Luke is saying, the supply shock will be the catalyst, but I think it's just a lot simpler than that. Like, I think once Bitcoin hits like 150K and it's running, that might just be the very simple catalyst, just a psychological switch clicks in people's minds. And they're like, wait, Bitcoin's 150K, you know, my stock portfolio's down, treasury bonds aren't doing good yield. Like, what is going on here? The Magnificent Seven, my tech stocks are down, but Bitcoin's ripping, and it just ripped past 150K. Like, I thought it was over at 109K. I thought we are going to 58K. So I think once we see some kind of retail FOMO breaking past all-time high, to me, that's probably going to be the catalyst. So, like, it's kind of what you're saying, the supply shock, but also I think it's just a psychological round number of Bitcoin that is going to really break the gates of the FOMO. So yes, pull up some charts. Let's get them more bullish. You know, give you a challenge here. We want them to get so bullish that they even stack a minimum of one. Oh, like wine. I'm getting trolled. This time is different. Rip. Yes, I said it. This time does feel different. It's fundamentally different. Like, I think Luke can agree with me here, Wine. It is different. We have nation states FOMOing into Bitcoin. We have more than one sailor coming into the market acquiring Bitcoin. We have a new regulatory environment in the US embracing Bitcoin. I don't know about you, bro, but it does seem like it's different here. So I know that's a meme, and it's a very easy, low-hanging fruit to troll Bitcoiners. Like, this time is different. And watch, you know, I'll eat my humble pie if we go back to it's not being different, but it sure does feel different. I'm going off vibes here, okay? I'm going off vibes here, Weinicus, and the vibes are strong. We are vibes trading Bitcoin now. It's no longer TA. It's just vibes, pure vibes. All right, Luke, pull some stuff up. Let's get a little more bullish before we round out today's show. So what do you got? What do you got over there? What do you got under your sleeve? Your shirtless sleeve here.
I'm drinking Screwdriver, apparently, to Ron's comment in the chat here. This is a pre-workout. I'm just trying to get jacked up for you guys, trying to get the caffeine hitting the veins. But yeah, I mean, like, so there's a couple of interesting comments in the chat. I think it should be one of the biggest myths in Bitcoin that people will always be selling their Bitcoin. Because I want to really extrapolate that out a little bit further. Yes, people will always be selling their Bitcoin. Who knows? I might even take a little bit of profit at $1 million a coin or $5 million a coin. And a lot of hodlers will be doing the same. But what I think a lot of people miss is when you get down to nearly zero Bitcoin on exchanges, and again, you just extrapolate the past 5 years of data. We're going to get there. We're going to get near to zero Bitcoin on exchanges. And yes, people will be selling. I get it. Bitcoin will be $1 million, $5 million a coin. All the plebs and hodlers will be selling. They'll be taking some profit. They'll be upgrading their lifestyle. They'll probably sell $1 million of Bitcoin, even $5 million of Bitcoin. If you've been hodling for a long time, that's just taking some chips off the table. But what people don't understand, they don't think about, in that environment, yes, people will be selling. But who is the buyer on the other side of that transaction? This is what people don't think about. Because Bitcoin at $100,000, it's not investable for Apple, Microsoft, Ray Dalio, Bridgewater Capital. Bridgewater Capital, $100 billion firm. They cannot put a 1% allocation into Bitcoin today. They can't do it. They're too big. It's the same with Apple, Microsoft, and all of these really big dogs. They cannot get a 10% allocation to Bitcoin. It's simply too small. But Bitcoin at $1 million, all of a sudden, they can actually begin buying Bitcoin. They can begin taking an allocation. And when Bitcoin's at $1 million, $5 million, $10 million a coin, who do you think has a bigger impact on price? And think about this for a minute. Let's say the hodlers one year want to sell, a million coins. The hodlers want to send 1 million Bitcoin to exchanges. Well, the big guys are going to completely dominate the actual equation here. So yes, a hodler could sell $1 million worth of Bitcoin, but who's on the other side of the transaction? Microsoft wants to buy $1 billion worth of Bitcoin. This is an order of magnitude difference. This is 1,000 times bigger. Yes, there'll be thousands of hodlers selling $1 million worth of Bitcoin when we hit these crazy $1 million, $2 million, $5 million price levels. But think about who is unlocked as a buyer as you get to these price levels. All of a sudden, nation states can start allocating 1, 2, 5, 10% of their treasury into Bitcoin. And when the Bitcoin do hit exchanges, yes, people will always be selling. Who do you really think's going to get access to the coins? We know that Bitcoin's a democratic network. We know that I have the same rules as a billionaire on the Bitcoin peer-to-peer network. But when we're talking about selling Bitcoin to an exchange, do you really think that the sovereign wealth fund of America doesn't have some sort of a handshake deal with Coinbase behind closed doors so that all of the Bitcoin on exchanges, it's first reserved for the billionaires or the sovereign wealth fund? Again, think about it. Bitcoin is becoming a national security risk. Do you really think the sovereign wealth fund of a nation state, America, is going to have the same rights as you on a Bitcoin exchange? Of course not. So yes, people will always be selling, but I don't think a lot of people think about who is the buyer on the other side of that transaction. Because once we get to these price levels, all of a sudden, the big dogs can actually start accumulating and buying Bitcoin, and they're price agnostic. Like, these guys are buying Bitcoin for the next 100 years. They're not, again, even if Bitcoin has a parabolic rally to $1 million, they're not going to buy at $1 million, and if Bitcoin drops to $900,000, they're going to, oh, I'm going to sell my Bitcoin because it's a short-term trade. No, they're thinking about this thing like Michael Saylor. They're holding it for 100 years, and when Bitcoin gets to $1 million a coin, and it's 5, 10, $20 trillion of market cap, finally they can actually invest in it because it's a big enough size. So again, that's a little bit of a rant. That's a little bit of myth busting, because I see this narrative a lot. Oh, we're never going to see zero Bitcoin on exchanges because there'll always be someone selling. Yes, there will, but what does the world look like in 5 years when we do have zero Bitcoin exchanges? Bitcoin just continues doing what it's doing. It's $500,000, it's $1 million a coin. All of a sudden, the buyers unlocked at those prices, they're going to be the ones who have dibs over all of the coins on exchanges. And again, I think a lot of people have this complacency. They're like, there's no rush for me to get a Bitcoin position because I'll always be able to buy Bitcoin because someone will always be able to sell their Bitcoin. And again, I just think it's the 4D chess, or a lot of people just aren't thinking about things in how the world's going to be different in 5 years, because it is going to be radically different in 5 years, I think, anyway.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And I saw this tweet. I forget who it was, and it's very interesting that, like, right when you get into Bitcoin, something clicks, and like, yeah, maybe it's just understanding what scarcity actually means in the world where nothing is really scarce anymore, and you get this like panic. You're like, once Bitcoin clicks, you panic and you're like, how can I acquire as much Bitcoin as possible? You're literally like, what's it? The rabbit in the Wizard of Oz, like I got somewhere to be. I'm a very important date. And you like, literally, you just start freaking out and you need to get as much Bitcoin as possible. And then the longer you're in Bitcoin, you kind of start to relax a little bit and you're like, no, like, I probably have more time than I think I have. But that idea of just like panicking to acquire as much Bitcoin, once that kicks in, this is going to be absolutely insane. And, someone's saying in the chat, like, oh, this is like new show, same conversation we constantly have. Look, bro, you understand Bitcoin better than like 99.9% of the population. The goal here is to see if we can get this message so other people can get into this idea of being a Bitcoiner, understanding what is going on. So yes, what gets repeated gets remembered, and what gets remembered gets repeated. This is literally mimetic warfare. I know I don't have pictures for you guys on Rumble, but this is how memes work. You need to repeat the message over and over and over again. All right, Luke, I have one question in here, and I don't think you've answered this on the show before. You've probably done it on your own channel, but Buck52000 says, hey, Luke, why isn't the price higher?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I said earlier, we've been living in a world where I believe price has been more disconnected with the fundamentals between 2020 and 2025 than ever before. I don't think we've ever seen an asset before being more disconnected from fundamentals and price than Bitcoin is today. So obviously, again, crazy Bitcoiners all throughout 2020, 2021, 2022, I was screaming and speculating something's going on. Bitcoin's under attack. Something's happening behind the scenes. paper Bitcoin, exchanges are lending out Bitcoin, the real price of Bitcoin is not being reflected based upon the public fundamentals and the buy pressure. What happened in 2022? Well, FTX went bankrupt. And when they did, we found out that they were naked selling 80,000 Bitcoin worth of Bitcoin. They were supposed to hold 80,000 Bitcoin. They held 0. And we even got private phone calls and transcriptions of calls between yours truly, the curly-haired, oh, I need to be really careful.
Yeah, we're on YouTube. We're on YouTube here, all right?
Curly-haired CEO of FTX Exchange, Sam Bankman-Fried, his name was escaping me, and his girlfriend, Caroline Ellison. And he was on the phone to her saying every single time Bitcoin's above $20,000, dump it, dump it, dump it, sell everything, dump the price of Bitcoin. These are open phone transcriptions that have now been leaked and they're public. So again, the largest exchange in Bitcoin was aggressively attacking and manipulating the price of Bitcoin, dumping it to make sure it was under a certain price level. They were supposed to hold 80,000 Bitcoin, they held 0. What happens when Coinbase is exposed for doing something similar? I'm not saying they are, I don't know, but what I am saying is it's really interesting that BlackRock is now distancing itself from Coinbase. Literally last week, BlackRock came out and said, yeah, we're actually going to be diversifying our custody away from Coinbase towards Anchorage Digital. And I was like, boy, that's interesting. Anchorage Digital, who is that? I Googled them. They're like 10 to 15 times smaller than Coinbase. So it's like, hang on a minute. Surely the bigger you are, the safer you are, the more legit you are. Brian Armstrong, US regulated exchange. He has to be safer, right? I mean, isn't that exactly what everybody said about Celsius and BlockFi? Everybody said, ignore FTX. They're this offshore, shady exchange in a penthouse in the Bahamas. That is true. But everybody said, yeah, BlockFi, US regulated company on US soil, they have to abide by the rules, right? Wrong. They were also blew up in 2022. So I don't think it's a stretch to assume that Coinbase is doing the same. And I'm absolutely shocked that more people aren't talking about the fact that BlackRock distancing themselves from Coinbase is happening. They're openly saying, yeah, we're out of here. Even 4 to 5 months ago, BlackRock actually changed their custody agreement. They amended their custody agreement with Coinbase. That was the first kind of step of distancing. Now, 3 to 4 months later in Q1 2025, they're openly saying, yeah, we're also going to diversify and put some funds with Anchorage Digital, some tiny company 15 times smaller than Coinbase. So I think to answer the question, it's a lot of context and a lot of a rant there, but I think the largest exchanges in the world are rehypothecating Bitcoin. And I do think a lot of the accumulators are getting really smart with how they accumulate their Bitcoin, and they're using all of these methods to not move the price in an aggressive way, but the aggressive drainage of Bitcoin off the exchanges, 900,000 Bitcoin in the past 2 years. That's your indicator that somebody's very stealthily just ripping as much Bitcoin off the exchanges as they can at these current prices. And we're just going to find out the true price of Bitcoin when that number hits 0. Why hasn't the price moved? It's those who are buying Bitcoin today are doing it in a more stealthy manner. So again, when retail was pumping Bitcoin and we get these massive parabolas in 2013 and 2017, retail weren't accumulating Bitcoin in a smart way. They just go on an exchange and they say, fuck, smash buy, baby, smash buy, right? Retail isn't smart. But these billionaires and these huge whales, they're letting the price come to them. That's why we're not seeing these crazy blow-off parabolas yet, because we will see them, but just not yet. And I do think, like, obviously the amount of new whales buying Bitcoin just hit, like, it's going parabolic right now, as Bitcoin was down in like the 75 to 80K range. And, you know, we were both making videos about this last week, Opti, saying this doesn't happen at tops. New whales don't enter the market in size like this at a top for Bitcoin. So those saying, oh, 100K is the top, I think it's unlikely. Again, anything's a probability. Sure, Bitcoin could have topped at 108K. I just don't think it's likely. And yeah, so rehypothecation, I think, is the biggest reason why price isn't absolutely mooning right now. And the buyers in the market are just a lot smarter. But eventually, the Bitcoin that they're buying will be reflected in the price because you can't delay the inevitable forever.
Yeah, I love that. I was having this conversation 2 weeks ago about like, man, if you really add up all the Bitcoin that is supposedly being bought right now, like it makes no sense why the Bitcoin price isn't ripping. And while you were talking, I was looking over at the mempool. Here I'll pull it up, I guess, for people to see as well. And I'm just like, we've been watching all of these inflows come into Bitcoin for the last couple of months, and we were seeing that fees were super low, right? And it's interesting today. I was looking it over. I'm like, wow, we're seeing the Bitcoin price rip. Our fees still incredibly low, and it looks like there is finally some on-chain demand for Bitcoin being moved. Now, of course, we don't know in real time what this is. Is this people selling? Is this people trying to get their Bitcoin from cold storage to the exchanges, or is this kind of what we're seeing with all this different data? Like people are buying Bitcoin and it's hitting on chain, so that Bitcoin is moving to the strong-handed, diamond-handed hodlers out there. So I find it pretty interesting that we are seeing the on-chain fees go up, and I think that does kind of excuse me, correlate to this idea of like, yes, we might be seeing a lot of rehypothecation in the market or in the last couple of weeks, but it looks like now they're, actually settling that Bitcoin. And I do tend to agree with you, because the last couple of weeks, if you watch all of these supposed buys going into the ETFs and, of course, corporations buying Bitcoin, the demand on chain was super low. Like we had like one sat fees for months now. And we were like, okay, well, if they're settling this much Bitcoin, like, why aren't we seeing this? Like, and not only that, like the mempools were clearing, there was only like 1 or 2 blocks for a couple of weeks at one sat, and everyone's like, yo, like we need fees. We need people using Bitcoin on chain. And I actually had a shower thought this morning of like, all right, we are seeing a lot of ETF inflows. But could this just be, they're doing some kind of SQL, Excel spreadsheet movement where they own the Bitcoin and they're just kind of circulating it to new buyers, but it's not actually hitting the on-chain data? And maybe that was the case for a little bit. Maybe we are seeing a lot of rehypothecation, but it is interesting that today we do see the mempool start to get a little busier. There's more blocks in queue. The fees are going up. So I think it's very safe to say that people are trying to secure that Bitcoin. They're trying to actually hold the asset and not just have an IOU paper claim to that Bitcoin, which is fundamentally different from everything else in the market. This is one of the main selling points of Bitcoin. So, hey, Luke, we are getting towards the end of the show, but I do want to tee you up one last time. Is there any bullishness left in you that we can round out today's show with?
Oh, come on, man. I could go for hours. Don't do that to the people. So I saw a comment here in the chat. Bitcoin bull. 1 Bitcoin is your goal. People get to it while you can. I love that comment for multiple reasons. One, I think, yes, getting to 1 Bitcoin, it's great. That's going to be generational wealth. That's going to be generational wealth for dynasties. That is going to be true generational wealth. But I don't think people need as much as you think. So I recently did a video kind of breaking down how much do you need to be in the top 1% on a Bitcoin standard? This is something I'm really fascinated by. And when you run the numbers and you use Pareto's principle as a distributional method, that kind of says, look, typically throughout any sort of wealth distribution in society, 20% of the people hold 80% of the wealth or 80% of the Bitcoin. So again, there's a really cool chart that Luke Broyles popped on Twitter a few years ago, and I kind of took it to its nth conclusion. If you assume that 4 million Bitcoin are available for sale, which I think after the nation state accumulation strategy and the Michael Saylor public corporate strategy has run its course, you can assume, I think, pretty conservatively, there's only going to be 4 million Bitcoin for the plebs, for the rest of us, and the other millionaires and the low-level billionaires. And when you have a look at that Pareto's principle distribution, what I found fascinating is you actually only need 0.015 Bitcoin to be a part of the new 1%. This is the millionaire class. So there will only ever be able to be 80 million individuals who will be able to hold 1.5% of a Bitcoin. So today that's worth somewhere around 1,500 big ones. And in the future, I found that if you assume there's 4 million Bitcoin on exchanges available for sale, 4 million Bitcoin that circulates on like a daily basis or like a weekly or a monthly basis that's actually available for sale, you only need 1.5% of a Bitcoin to be a part of the new millionaire class. I thought that was pretty wonky, but I wanted to push the numbers even further because you guys know I'm incredibly bullish. And the way I actually think about things, I genuinely believe there's going to be less than 1 million Bitcoin that's actually available of the 21 million coins for sale. Like, I genuinely think Michael Saylor squatting on 500,000 coins today, 500,000 Bitcoin today, him holding that for 100 years, I genuinely believe 95% of the Bitcoin is going to be in public corporation treasuries like that, or nation state treasuries, which is just not going to move for 100 years. That's how I genuinely look at the 21 million Bitcoin. I think 1 million coins is even conservative, but I said, all right, let's get a little bit crazy and let's run some hypothetical scenarios. And under that scenario, if there's 1 million Bitcoin that's actually available for sale, you actually only need 0.00375 Bitcoin to be a part of this new millionaire class. So that today is something like $400 worth of Bitcoin. That's less than 1% of a Bitcoin. And again, I genuinely think that's conservative. Like, I genuinely believe Bitcoin's going to be worth hundreds of millions of dollars per coin. And it's all based upon that assumption. There's 21 million Bitcoin in the entire world, and it's just going to be hoarded. It's going to be, and again, that's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing. People hoard valuable things. And I think Michael Saylor just being one of the 2,500 billionaires saying, I'm sitting on 500,000 coins. I'm not selling them for 100 years. There only really has to be another 4 or 5 or 10 billionaires who actually understand Bitcoin close to Saylor's level, who want to do the same thing. And we're kind of already in that world. We're in that world where only really 1 million Bitcoins available for sale. So yeah, I mean, simple scarcity, simple supply and demand economics is why I'm way more bullish than most people. And again, I know it sounds crazy. It sounds like hopium, but I genuinely believe everything I just said. I do think Bitcoin's going to be worth hundreds of millions of dollars a coin. I do genuinely think you only need 0.01 Bitcoin to be generational wealth. When you actually run the numbers with what I think is conservative assumptions, 0.015 Bitcoin puts you in the new class of millionaires on a Bitcoin standard. That's just maths. That's just how wealth distributions work. I'm only assuming that Bitcoin takes over as money of the world. That's it. And how's that going to be distributed? We don't know yet, but I lean more towards the bullish assumptions than the bearish ones.
Let's go. So dollar sat parity coming soon. 1 million sats is and will be the new millionaire. But what was that? What was the extremely bullish one? You said 0 or 0.00375. So what? 370,000 sats you think will be generational wealth?
Yeah. So if you assume 4 million Bitcoin on exchanges, you need 1.5% of a Bitcoin. Now, if you divide that by 4, and if you assume 1 million Bitcoin on exchanges, you just divide that number by 4. So you only need 0.00375 Bitcoin.
Okay, 375,000 sats. Someone do the quick math in the chat. That is, what, $400 right now?
Yep, something like that.
That's nuts. All right. Someone in the chat says, my man. All right. So I think we sufficiently got bullish on today's show. Luke, it's always a pleasure coming on. Actually, guys, I forgot to say Luke will be on tomorrow. So maybe blast him on Twitter and maybe we can answer some of the questions. But Luke, thanks so much, man. It's really been a pleasure. Of course, guys, go follow him on Twitter, Luke Mikic, MIKIC 21 on Twitter. Of course, he also has a YouTube channel, and he will be on the show a lot more often for you guys. So maybe with me, or I want to get him on with Nico, which basically means I want to take a vacation here soon. So he might be on the show with Nico soon. But Luke, thanks so much. Hang out behind the scenes while I wrap. Or actually, before I do that, I do have to shout out the Bitcoin Conference 2025 in Las Vegas. We are taking over the Venetian Hotel in Las Vegas, May 27th through the 29th. Make sure you get your ticket. We're going to have the whole Simply Bitcoin team. Actually, hey, Luke, not to put you on blast while you have your mouth full of something over there. Pause. Are you going to be there? Did you get your visa worked out? Will people see you?
I am going to the US Embassy in the country that I'm currently in this week, trying to resolve
Let's
it.
go.
I'm going to try my best.
Okay, so you might see Luke there as well. Anyways, guys, this is the largest Bitcoin conference in the world. And considering the price is kind of ripping, I think this one might actually be the largest attendance ever. So it might get really crazy. It's going to be really fun in Vegas. Again, we are embracing the game theory. There is going to be literal U.S. politician speaking on stage. The legendary Ross Ulbricht's going to be there, and I guess even Peter Schiff's going to be there. So maybe we can dunk on gold live. Anyways, guys, scan the QR code and use simply all caps to get 10% off your tickets. On that note, guys, let me pull everyone off. Luke, hang out for a moment. We love you guys. This has been Wednesday, April 23rd. I believe this is episode 1229, and this has been your boy Opti. I'm glad you guys got sufficiently bullish. We will be back tomorrow, same time as usual, unofficially 12:15 p.m. Don't yell at me because we start late. But I love you guys. Get outside, touch some grass, eat some good food, and get a workout in. I'm literally going to the gym right after this. So make sure we are fit mentally, financially, and spiritually. This is how we win, guys. As our boy Svetsky was saying, you know, the code of virtue of Bitcoiners is taking over the world. Proof of work is a lifestyle. On that note, peace out. I will see you tomorrow.
Today's episode was brought to you by BitcoinWell.com, a Bitcoin-only platform on a mission to enable financial independence.